Well, welcome everyone. Thanks again for watching this video. You may remember uh, several months back, Pastor Vinny and I would sit down in the sanctuary of Crossroads Community Church and just talk about various topics that we wanted to discuss and thought might be helpful for the church, Crossroads Community Church, as well as the broader church. And so we're doing that again, but as you can tell, this is COVID-19 style. And I was excited to sit down with Pastor Vinny and just talk to them about some of the things he learned on his sabbatical and how he could share that with us as a church. But of course, others who may tune in and want to learn from the importance of pastors and sabbaticals. So the first one I want to start out with is, well, Pastor Vinny, you went on sabbatical late January, early February. So I was just curious, in your time away, how did God speak to you? What did you learn from your time on sabbatical?
Yeah, I learned just how hard I was running the year leading up to sabbatical. Sometimes you don't know how hard you're working or running until you actually stop. And so I was probably working around 50 hours a week or more, maybe 55 some weeks. And once I slowed down with that, I looked around my house and I saw all the things that I had left undone. So part of sabbatical was just catching up on some of that stuff around the house that I needed to, be aware of and take care of. But I was also able to slow down and be with my family, see them beyond just with my eyes, kind of seeing them and what's going on in their lives and hearing them on a different level than I was before. So that was good. I also learned that I always have more ideas and opportunities than I can actually handle. So I brought home a ton of stuff with me from my office, things that maybe projects or things I was interested in doing, thought maybe during sabbatical, I might look into some of those things. And, I learned I need to manage opportunities and ideas better because I can generate a lot of ideas and maybe not get done the things that I'm supposed to. So I also, have realized I need to say no to a lot of stuff. So that'll be part of this next season of growth for me is learning how to say no and prioritizing better, making goals and kind of sticking with the main things that God has for me and trying not to get sidetracked. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. It was interesting when I know you've talked about it a lot to the church, and you and I have discussed it as well, just the importance of Sabbathing, right?
Yes.
Taking a Sabbath. I heard someone say recently that one of the things that, COVID-19 has done is it has essentially forced people to do that. Now, of course, there's an exception of those who are in jobs that will still require them to work. But it is interesting that I've heard people say that they felt like God has kind of forced them to stop. They've been going so hard. Well, God put them in a situation now where they didn't have a choice, but to stop. And so that's a good thing. And hopefully we are using that time wisely. Well, another question I had was any insights that, things that you learned while on sabbatical that you could share with our church, and then again, more broadly as well, other pastors, other churches that might watch this video and see things that they could learn. Any thoughts?
Sure. One of the best things I did was I booked myself for a spiritual direction session. I kind of wasn't really looking for that, but I went to a soul care retreat online, and as part of that, they said that you could, do a spiritual direction session with the spiritual director. And, we sat together in quietness, waiting on God. It was kind of a weird experience for me to be with somebody. And for a lot of the time that we were together, we were just quiet. It helped me, though, to discern what God had been trying to say to me during the beginning part of my sabbatical. And as I talked to this person and they reflected back to me what they heard, they were able to share some themes with me that they heard and how I was reacting to God in that moment with them. They were able to hear what I said and then put them into some themes. And that was just really helpful. So, some of the things I got out of that session were that I need to start my day with the Lord, inquiring what he wants for that particular day, that I need to cultivate a desire to join him in the work that he's doing in that day, instead of just giving him my plans, but trying to figure out what are his plans. And also, in a sense, when I have plans, give those plans to him and give him those work projects And as I go about doing them, just knowing the Lord's presence is there, is inviting him there. And if he wants to take me in another direction, to be open to that. And then the last thing I heard God say during that session was that when it comes to the end of my work, I do need to stop. And so that's a challenge sometimes. My mind's always going. So stopping when it's time to stop is sometimes a challenge. And one of the major issues that I had before sabbatical was really wanting to see all the steps of God's plan and his will ahead of time. Like, Lord, show me what the path is and I'll do it. Like, but I want to see like the first step and the second step and all the way to the end. And there was a quote that the spiritual director shared with me that I wanted to share with you guys. And that quote is, "In the end, it is neither you nor I who leads the dance. It is God. You and I do not need to know the way in advance. We only need to entrust ourselves to the love of Christ and to the action of his Spirit. In this, we will be led by a hidden path in the shadow of the cross and in the radiance of the eternal mystery of the Father." And I don't know, somebody out there might need to hear that today. I definitely needed to hear it on that day. It was one of the major lessons that I can't wait for God to show me all the stepping stones. I need to take that first step that he has right there in front of me. And so I would highly recommend spiritual direction or finding a mentor who listens really well, both to you and to the Lord.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I know I've seen that in my own life, and having conversations with people who are trying to discern God's will and what his will for them is in the future. And one of the lessons I've learned is that Paul he tells us in 2 Corinthians 5:7 that we walk by faith, not by sight. And we want, it's much easier for us to walk by sight rather than by faith, and have everything, nice and neat laid out for us. I have found, and I'll just go ahead and throw this out there, for myself, but just to piggyback off what you said there, in case anyone is listening to this video, is that I've found in my own life when I'd rather walk by faith, what I'm essentially saying is I want to be in control, right? I want to be in control rather, and and of course God's always going to call us to a time and a place where we have to entrust ourselves to him. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that'd be good. I hope the people who listen to this will take away how they can apply it to their lives as well. I know sometimes people in churches and sometimes elder boards or whatever, because I've been asked about this, so I've been asked about it, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this before. Why do you think it would be helpful for pastors to have sabbaticals? If a pastor's in the church where they don't have a sabbatical policy, and any insights you give, as somebody who's been in ministry now over 20 years,
Sure.
How would you consult with that elder board?
I kind of use a football analogy for this one. Even Tom Brady needs an off season. Can you imagine how long Tom Brady would have made it if he didn't have a time of rest? He would have made it 3 or 4 years, maybe at the top, at tops. That's about the time that most pastors make it at a particular church. So that's sort of a pragmatic answer, that it's good for the pastor that he has some time away from the church, however long that is, a month, 2 months, 3 months. But I think it's also good for the church. And so, people have to step up that hadn't stepped up before. People, realize just how much they miss someone when they're gone. So, and I used to tell one pastor that I worked with that, we needed him to go away on vacation because we needed a rested leader. And, I would also encourage people to take a little bit of a sabbatical challenge to do a study on Sabbath and see what you learn and see what principles you may be able to take out of that, as to whether or not you give your pastor a sabbatical. There are some great books on Sabbath and sabbaticals. Focus on the Family has a great resource that we may be able to link with this video. So,
yeah, no, that's good. And you talked about the previous question about encouraging someone to see a spiritual director or a friend who listens well. And then you just mentioned there about pastors and the importance of taking sabbaticals. The Crossroads, at least, will know my mentor, Steve McLean, who's kind of functioned as sort of a spiritual director for me. And our church will know that he served at his church for 34 years. And in personal conversation with me, he's told me, multiple times that it was only that church's generous sabbatical policy that is basically the reason why he was able to stay at that church for 34 years. I mean, he said if it wasn't for the sabbaticals they gave me, I don't know that I would have made it that long. So again, and because we know that it's generally better for churches to have a pastor who does a long tenure rather than
Yes.
cycling pastors every 4 or 5 years. If that's something that the church values, then they should definitely look seriously at some type of sabbatical policy for the church. So anyways, well, thanks again, Pastor Vinny. Just wanted to sit down with you. I know people who tuned into our service last Sunday, that was their first time seeing you in about 3 months. So they got to see you and hear you read scripture. So now they can know a little bit more about what you did and how God spoke to you during that time. And so can others who listen to this video. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, great. Amen.